Last week I finally mentioned the elephant in the room that I've refused to speak about up to this point despite largely being a DOS-based gaming channel, and that's abandonware. Abandonware games are the ones that have been ignored by their original creator and owner, and for which no official support is available. The term has been around since the mid-90s, which coincidentally is when a whole load of DOS games were removed from shelves and replaced by Windows titles, never to be commercially available again. Copyright law varies from country to country, but the general consensus is that public domain downloads will happen 50 years after the game's publication. Since DOS itself only appeared 40 years ago, you're gonna have to wait another decade for some sweet legal 1981 gaming action for free. Fortunately, there's another way to enjoy these titles other than patiently hoping that they get a commercial re-release or are randomly given away as freeware by the developer. The reality is that despite the hundreds of DOS titles now digitally available for purchase once more, there are thousands which aren't and likely never will be. Games that would have been lost forever to the mists of time save for the efforts of an unpaid community of gaming historians. One of the most prominent preservation teams is led by a user called eXo, and their flagship project eXoDOS. In 2007, eXo began an adventure game collection that consisted of about 250 titles. This was further expanded on with an RPG collection before they realised they might as well embark on making a full DOS set. This endeavour is an impossible task, and I think they knew that at the time, but the result of their efforts is the best sort of failure, in that it isn't really one at all. They shot for the stars and hit the moon, and the moon was covered in DOS games. Unlike ROMs, which are designed for a single system with fixed hardware, DOS games vary wildly in terms of a required configuration and the target machine. Back in the bad old days of DOS emulation, it would take you hours to get everything just right for a single title. eXo wanted to make it so that that was no longer an issue, with pre-configured emulation and image mounting of the best version of the DOS games in question. In addition to this, there was no comprehensive list of every DOS game ever made, so a huge amount of time and effort was invested into researching the existence of games, and then tracking down their original versions, effectively bringing many titles back from the dead. Thanks to these efforts and the assistance of curator Jason Scott, as of 2014 there are also thousands of DOS games freely available on the Internet Archive, saved from disappearing altogether by yet another group of digital antiquarians. Until companies sue for removal and attempt to scrub all copies of the title from the internet, of course. Which is why having a local copy is the best experience, and there's no beating eXoDOS in its launchbox front end. A system that I've personally used over the past year with amazing results. Until a Linux-based version appears, that is. Much like the ROM sets before it, there's no legal leg for a project like this to stand upon, despite it clearly being about historical preservation first and foremost. But the work's out there now, and there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. If the choice is between letting games die out, with the last malfunctioning drive that harbours them, or archiving them eternally for future generations to observe and play, I know which side I'm picking. There's a brilliant game sitting on my hard drive right now that almost nobody has heard of, but I'll eventually uncover, and it'll be played anew thanks entirely to the contributions of the eXoDOS team, and those who support them.